I'm going to introduce our first speaker. Michael Rymer from DarkSky International is their communities program manager, excuse me, and he lives in Denver, Colorado. So with that, I will say, take it away, Michael.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you everybody with the Bird Collision Prevention Alliance. Thank you for allowing us to be here today to talk about this very important issue. And personally, thank you for allowing me to talk about this issue in relation to dark skies. As we'll kind of share today, dark skies is a huge uh, love of mine in particular. I come from a very bright place. Obviously, I do live in Denver, Colorado, so unfortunately, we do have a lot of bad light pollution here on this side of the Rocky Mountains. A little bit better when you go west over those Rockies, but I'm originally from Dallas, Texas. Grew up there my whole life, outside of the past few years, and so I know what it's like to be under bright skies at night. Friday Night Lights is a big thing down in Texas, of course, for those who are very aware of football culture. So my brightness was kind of directly overhead in those weekend kind of environments. And so that's what I grew up knowing. But it wasn't until later in my adult life that I came to understand the importance of dark skies. I fell in love with astronomy, looking up at the sky at night and wondering what's going on out there, wondering how I fit into all of this, how we all kind of play our roles in this beautiful tapestry of nature that we get to be a part of. And as I explore more and more about the importance of dark skies, I become more attuned to nature beyond just looking up. I have become accustomed at looking, not just up at the night sky, but looking out on the horizon, seeing what else is out there needing to be protected, and how I can kind of work that into, my love for dark skies. I've taken up gardening a lot this year, and I'm sure in my life I'll become a avid bird watcher, as I think most people tend to do when they maybe get a little bit over. But it's an important thing to do, to be aware of our surroundings. So, I look up at the stars, and that brings me even more connection to this world that we live on. So, what I want to talk about today is kind of this big question that maybe a lot of us get when we talk about the things that we love, these issues of conservation. So what? Why do I need to care about this? This doesn't really pertain to me in my day to day. I don't really care. I don't know if I should care. I don't have time for that. It doesn't really affect me. We've heard all versions of kind of these weird little excuses, maybe from the general population, as to their response to what we're trying to talk about. But when I ask this question, I kind of ask it tongue in cheek, because I know this is what we hear. So what about dark skies? Why do I care? Why do I need to care? Uh, how does this affect me? Well, I want to start by kind of telling a little anecdote. Several years ago, and maybe not that long, a few years back, during the annular eclipse that came through our country, here in America, where the moon intersects the sun during the day, and it doesn't fully eclipse the sun's disk as a total solar eclipse does. Um, it kind of creates a ring of fire if you're on that path of annularity. I don't have that picture here, but this is a picture I did take during that annular eclipse. I was in the hill country of Texas, very beautiful place, and I was taking pictures to document. I was surrounded by a lot of other like-minded people who were very interested in this phenomenon. It was great. It was a good time to commune with others as we, take in the nice show that nature had provided us. And in taking a series of photos, I got this image. It was unplanned. This was right before the eclipse was starting to take place. And I had an unknown visitor, a photo bomb of the avian variety here in this photo. And I thought, this is better. This is almost, if not better, than the picture of the entire annular eclipse that I got later in the day. Because I was thinking, I wasn't planning on this. I wasn't anticipating It's a likelihood birds flying around a day, of course. They're not really attuned to what's going on, at least at this point in time. But I got this friendly little feathered friend of, you know, kind of taking in the experience with me. And I felt so connected to this creature even days after the fact when I went to review these photos. And I was thinking, there are millions of us here in the country on this day looking up, but these birds are constantly flying around during the day and at night, as we know. They're looking down. They're seeing the earth from a different perspective than we normally do. And so it kind of made me feel like I'm looking up, they may be looking down. What are we seeing? And we're both seeing the effects of light pollution on our world. So, what is light pollution? Light pollution is the human made alteration of outdoor light levels from those occurring naturally. Uh, we all kind of are aware of this when we live in highly urbanized settings, highly developed. We don't see the stars at night. We are aware of things of light coming into our homes, light shining into our faces, and it's very uncomfortable, very nuisance. And so these are all kind of encompassed under this unfortunate phenomenon of light pollution that we ourselves create. This doesn't happen in nature, but it has a very real effect on our environment. So I mentioned, what causes the brightness of the sky at night. This is a phenomenon known as sky glow. And because our atmosphere is made of particles and molecules that it's not completely non-existent. There's matter up in the air above us. The light that emanates from our terrestrial point of view is reflected off of the particles in the atmosphere. And so that brightens the sky. We see that reflection. Some of it goes to space, but some of it is reflected down. And because of that reflected light from our atmosphere, it causes us to not see the night sky as we should. There's glare, and I'm sure everybody here who operates a motor vehicle has been very frustrated, let's say, in the increased development of very bright, very bluish white headlights from oncoming vehicles. But while we at DarkSky International are not necessarily ready to address this with the auto industry, they have a larger budget than we do. We still experience glare from fixed permanent lights. So street lights, billboard signs, illuminated signs for businesses, these all still produce this glare. They're distracting, they're unsafe, and it's just not a very generally comfortable experience when we are out at night. We want to be out at night where our eyes are able to adapt to the nighttime environment. And when we have light shining in our eyes, we're not able to do that. And then there's light trespass. Light trespass is, again, a lot of us may be familiar with this concept of a neighbor's light or a business light from across the street or a street light across the corner that is unshielded, unnecessarily bright, and it's shining into our homes. Now, there are simple solutions, of course. Draw your shades, throw up a blackout curtain, but that's not always realistic. That's just putting a band-aid on a bigger issue altogether. Light trespass is not necessary. It's light going where it doesn't need to go. So, how do we address this? I'll talk about that a little bit more, but a real world example of what this looks like is from my own backyard. This is me standing out on my back patio looking at a neighbor's house. And I got to tell you, I don't need their porch light to light my backyard. But it is. This is exceptionally bright. Um, it's not necessary because their house, their property is not where my house and property are. So this is being a rude neighbor. Now they kind of address this light, and I'll show the kind of after of this before picture, but it's still not great, and I'll explain why here in a minute. According to a recent report that came out from Globe at Night, this is a great citizen science project where people can report what they are able to visually see in the night sky using a constellation that is very recognizable and seeing how many stars in that constellation they can see. where they are in the world at a specific time. And so this is all very, communal based, good scientific research. It was compiled into a report that was done over 10 years of data collection. And from that report, we saw that light pollution is increasing almost 10% every year. So this is a rapidly growing issue, and we know as urbanization and high development continues in the places that we live, and urban sprawl, kind of racks our communities. We see this growth continue. Where there is growth in population, there tends to be growth in light pollution, and we're trying to mitigate that growth right now. We're trying to reduce it before we effectively solve light pollution because we got to do a lot of catch up on this. So this is kind of a graphic showing the increased light pollution since mid 1900s and showing this 10% growth. And at the end 2025, we see there are very few dark places in the United States anymore. You have to go way out of the way to find a place where there's no light pollution. And even then, when you go to places like maybe the Grand Canyon National Park, where there are not a lot of light pollution, causing in the immediate area, you have Flagstaff down the hill, but that's a very good community in addressing this issue. You can see the light dome from Las Vegas from Grand Canyon National Park. So light domes, light pollution does not know boundaries. So it's a local issue, but it's growing to be a little bit more than a local issue. 80% of the world lives under light polluted skies, and 99% of the people in the United States and in Europe cannot see the Milky Way from their homes. Now, this may be kind of a novelty, but there is a sign of a greater issue. But this is a tragic loss of a natural resource that our ancestors had at their disposal, and we want it back. So what? Someone may say, so what about light pollution? It doesn't really have this effect on me. I don't care about seeing stars. I'm more worried about something else, XYZ. These are the issues that I care about. Stars at night, not a concern. Well, it's more than just about seeing stars. It's a lot more than seeing stars. First, we conserve energy and resources when we reduce the light that we use at night. Wasted light is wasted energy, and we all know that wasted energy is wasted money. I think most people can agree that wasted money is not a good thing. I certainly don't like to waste my money. I'm very conscious of the energy I use at home and in my day-to-day life because I don't have the means to afford wasted energy and those resources. So when we reduce the light that we use, when we use it more responsibly, we're reducing our energy consumption. It's estimated that $3 to $7 billion is wasted annually on wasted outdoor light. 30% of all outdoor lighting in the US is wasted. That's a lot. And that's just an easy fix to address this. This kind of compares to 21 million tons of carbon dioxide being released. Lights are not just something that use electricity willy-nilly. We generate that electricity through means like oil, natural gas, hydroelectric power, of course. As these renewable energy sources kind of try to become more mainstream, we still have a lot to do on that to make it more ubiquitous. Because right now, oil and natural gas are still the highest production of energy, the sources of energy. And when we waste it by leaving our lights on at night or not shielding them, we're putting all that CO2 unnecessarily into our environment. And we know the effects of that. We want to safeguard human health and wellness by reducing light pollution, by being out and more accustomed to dark skies. We have to have the natural dark nighttime environment for us. We find that sleep is highly affected by the amount of light that we introduce in our homes. Now, like I said earlier, there are means of kind of curtailing outside light coming into our homes, yes, but we still introduce a lot of the light to directly to ourselves using phones, tablets, TV, computer screens late into the night. And these things affect our ability to sleep. Uh, and if we affect our ability to sleep, to rest, we become more sick. There's still a lot of research to be done on this topic, but because it's gained so much traction, there's a lot of people interested in this topic. We want to preserve a shared cultural heritage. I may have said before, our ancestors had access to a dark nighttime environment, but we know that it's not pitch black at night necessarily because the glow of the moon at night or planets, the Milky Way itself, it's not totally dark. There is a ton of light up in the sky that we have used to connect with, either through utilitarian means such as navigation and timekeeping or storytelling. This is how we kind of connected with nature and ourselves. We told these stories that meant something to us that we could relate to. And this is what we want to preserve with Dark Skies. Of course, we are inspired, as I said, we told stories. We and the night sky have, been a source for scientific study, religious experience, philosophy, art, literature. There's so much more. I can't tell you the amount of songs that I'm aware of that mention stars. Now, that's not the main topic of the song, but there's still a prevalent, factor and presence of the stars in our daily lives. Most of our country's flags have stars on them. Now, we want to protect nocturnal habitats, and this is where I want to tie in a little bit to the topic at hand for this summit. Um, we have to be aware that we are not the only people, we're not the only creatures, excuse me, inhabiting this beautiful planet of ours. There are plenty of other species, most other, if not all, except for humans, that sleep in the dark at night. But we, in our dependency on light at night, put light into these nocturnal habitats, and they don't need it. Our feathered, scaled, furry friends don't need that light at night. They've evolved millions of years to not need a nightlight. Turtles are a great example. This cute little guy is a great mascot for Dark Skies, one of a few. Um, we obviously talk about sea creatures, especially turtles, in coastal settings. If you're in Florida, the Carolinas, the Gulf, East Coast, West Coast, of course, where turtle habitats are prevalent, but we're seeing them shrink because light pollution is a huge factor in this. They need the natural sky over the horizon to lead them to their home in the sea. But when we have too much artificial light at night behind them and that attracts them, we all know how bad that can get. We are studying more about trees and how their growth through the seasons change when too much artificial light at night is introduced into their environment. Um, they may bud earlier, lose their leaves later, have shorter lifespans. Obviously, we need trees, we need plants to offer their vegetation, carbon dioxide intake, and releasing oxygen. That's a big thing that we all kind of need to depend on. But all life depends on this. And not just for those, biological purposes. Trees, plants provide homes for a lot of species of all variety, birds especially. Insects are a key to sustaining healthy ecosystems, and they're plummeting at an alarming rate. Light at night affects pollinating species like moths, butterflies, even bats, of course, um, that help continue the life process of plants. And we depend on these creatures to do the job that they have the instinct to do. But these insects, a lot of these creatures also serve as a food source. So when this food source for other animals decreases because of light pollution, we see those downstream effects. Where we finally get to our feathered friends, and where billions of birds die each year, as well as a cause of light pollution with needlessly illuminated buildings at night. Now, I know a lot of us here are very familiar with bird strikes against very tall, skyscrapers and huge cities, but we find that there is an equal impact in suburban areas because of residential lighting. So it's not just in those big downtown centers where there are skyscrapers that we see a lot of effects, negative effects on birds. We see that there are sublethal impacts as well from artificial light at night. Exhaustion from flying off course for migrating species, loss of a dark habitat entirely, and the loss of food supply, as I mentioned before. So this is a video, will come into focus here, but this is a video showing not insects being trapped in beams of light at night. These are birds. Every one of these flying creatures are birds, and they're trapped in a beam of light. Birds, bats, insects depend on the light from the moon and the stars as they scan the horizon to navigate during migratory periods. But if bright lights like these are on during those crucial times, these creatures will become lost and they won't make it to their destination. So the ecological implications of this for us is that these animals are pollinators of plants and we depend on them. So it's really important that we address, yes, the buildings, the skyscrapers where we find all these bird collisions. But we at Dark Sky International understand that it's more about that. It's not just about turning off lights a few nights a year to account for these migratory times. It's about addressing lights 365 days a year, excuse me. Okay, so what? I know about these impacts. Yeah, these things kind of concern me, but what do you want me to do about it? How do I fix this problem? It seems like a big problem um, that spans the globe. So what? What do I do? Well, we can make a difference. We at Dark Sky International fully believe that solving light pollution actually can be a very simple thing in most cases. We like to say that it's the only solution or the only problem that we can solve at the speed of light, and that's true. Better lighting design is how we do this. So we have 5 principles that we call our principles for responsible outdoor light at night. If we follow these 5 principles, this will help us prevent or help minimize light pollution. So these are kind of 5 principles that you can maybe ask of yourself. Are my outdoor lights useful? Do I need to have this many lights or do I need to have a light in this location? Could it be served better in a different location at my home, at my business, in our community? Is it targeted? Targeted not just meaning it's tilted in the right way, but is that light being directed downward onto the ground where it needs to be and not where it doesn't need to be? Shielding the lights below the horizontal plane is the best way to do this. This prevents uplight, light shining into the trees, the sky, which is not where we live. If you live in a tree, that's awesome. You probably just don't, so you don't need that light going up to the branches. You won't want to use a low level because when we focus that light onto the ground, we find that we don't need that much light because it's going to where it needs to be. Then we want to control the lights better, instead of forgetting that we've turned a light off or allowing a light just to be on at all hours of the night when no one's around to use it. Motion detectors, dimmers, timers are a great way to ensure that the lights are on only when necessary and that they're not using all of the light um, that it may be able to put out. It only uses a fraction when necessary. And then finally, this is not a kind of a last but not least, warm color temperature. It is important. We want to use something a little bit more amber, a soft white around 3000 Kelvin color temperature or lower. This is kind of what we call warmer color temperature. This has varying impacts on creatures when we use ultra white bluish light. But it's not the end all be all of solving this. When we change the color temperature of a light and not addressing anything else about the fixture, it doesn't really help us because we still have unnecessary light going out into the environment. So a good demonstration of what I talked about, especially with the targeted, is this. Now, depending on how big your computer screen is, how close you are to it, you might be able to make out a shady kind of figure in the background there. But for the most part, at first glance, that light from that house is in your face, causing tremendous glare. And because of that, you can't see what's behind that light. You can't really see anything else in the environment as you kind of look towards that fixture. But when we shield it, when we block a lot of that light, we can still see the environment, including the person who is standing there in the background. Now, there's this common misconception, of course, that more lighting is safer. Well, that's not entirely true. Well-designed light is safe. Wild light going everywhere into our faces at night, not helpful. It's not safe. I can't see when another car or a bright street light or sign is shining in my face. That's not safe. Okay, so what? I know how to address this. What does the future look like for the dark sky movement? I hear what you're saying. I know that this is a problem. Now I have a good understanding of how to fix this. This all seems rather simple. It still takes a community of people to make a difference. And in my role as community program manager at Dark Sky International, I am here to help community leaders and volunteers to work together in creating dark sky friendly policy because we find that policy is where the most good change can happen. And it doesn't necessarily have to be at a state or federal level, although we do want to get to that point. But this is an issue that can be tackled more easily where we live and work. So get involved with your community, volunteer, look at lighting in your neighborhood, do a fun little neighborhood activity of auditing the street lights, auditing the house lights, because a lot of people don't know that a light is bad. And just a little bit of education, a good conversation about the issue will change a lot of hearts and minds, provided you do it in a respectful, neighborly kind of way. At Dark Sky International, we certainly have programs that kind of encourage and show how to have these conversations, what to do to address outdoor light at night. And of course, we want to recognize those efforts. So we have our dark sky approved luminaires where we work with manufacturers and distributors on good quality dark sky friendly products. We have our International Dark Sky Places program where we certify places from all around the world, communities, parks, larger landscapes like reserves where multiple communities are working together to protect a dark core area, and remote places like sanctuaries. And as we move forward, we want to recognize places in more urban developed settings because even though they may not be quantifiably dark, we still see the value in the efforts that people and communities take. So we are advancing responsible outdoor lighting through policy and through light pollution education. So what now? What do I do? I have this knowledge. What can I do to move forward? I bet you'll start paying attention to every light you see if you are not already aware of this issue. Chances are many of you here on this meeting are very aware of it. Um, but look at it through a different lens if you can. It's not entirely just about one issue versus another. It's all holistic, it's all intertwined. And that's the nature of our beautiful world. It all has to work together. We have to work with it. So, as we enjoy the rest of the summit here, I hope we all kind of take away something that we find useful and not necessarily just in a go outside, go do the action kind of way, but we find something that may click a little bit better for us in how we approach this issue in our lives. If you don't take anything extra away, I still thank you for you being here, for hearing what I have to say about dark skies. If you want to learn more about what we at Dark Sky International do, please reach out to us. My email is there. Our website is darksky.org. We have so many resources available. We're always working on expanding our programs to be more inclusive and tackling this issue in as many facets as we possibly can. And I know that with your partnership, with your help, we're going to be even more productive and more efficient in doing this as we find more places becoming interested in what we have to say. So thank you again, everybody, for being here, to taking an interest in dark skies and bird conservation. If you have any questions for me moving forward, please let me know, and I will turn it back over to Bryan.
Thank you, Michael. That was great. Just see, there was one question that came in for you, and we've got 3 minutes.
Okay.
Is there a preferred protocol for measuring light trespass from a point source?
There are, there are technical devices that you can use to measure, to quantify it. But I always find that, in my example of my neighbor, it's kind of one of those things where you know it where you see it. But when we think about planning light for new developments, it's always great to consult with a proper lighting designer to ensure that the measurements are adequate, not just to necessarily prevent light trespass, but also to ensure that the safety of the environment is met, that we do have enough light shining to where it needs to be. So there are methods to that, and it's usually done more with lighting professionals or a very good technical know-how.